British Columbia, the 51st state of hockey. What are we talking about here? This is Jeff from Junior Hockey Advisor. We're talking about the BCHL, the British Columbia Hockey League. And we're going to look at the amount of Americans that are in the league and the significance of the league. For those of you that have not had that geography class in a while, British Columbia is on the far left. There it is. And it is the home of the BCHL. The BCHL kind of looks like this. Went one too far there. Sorry about that. Just look at the groupings in the province. A lot of people have a misconception of this league being a league that is hard to travel in if you're a player. It can't be further from the truth. There's only a couple outliers, but for the most part, tightly grouped, easy travel league once you're up there. Now, it's not easy to get to if you're going to visit or making your first trip up there, but once you're there and you're playing, it is not compared to the North American League or compared to the USHL, this is by far the easiest of the travel of the leagues. So why is this important? Well, not why is the travel important, but why is the BCHL important? It's because it's one of the top 4 producers of NCAA Division I hockey when you're looking at the junior programs. You've got the USHL, which sits on the top. North American Hockey League is a close second. BCHL is in there in third, and the AJ is in the top 4, but significantly lags the other 3. So there's 432 players this year as of the first second week of October in the BCHL. There are 17 teams and 120 Americans. Well, how does that relate to the AJ? Or how does that compare to the AJ? Well, there's 15 teams in the AJHL, and there's only 27 Americans. Now, that's a low. I believe they topped out around 38 last year, so I'm not sure if that's a recruiting decision or if it just is an anomaly from a normal year with the AJ. Normally, a little bit higher on the numbers there. So of the 120 Americans in the BCHL, where do they come from? Well, I don't think anybody would question the first 4 choices. It's pretty standard, your 4 biggest markets in the United States, and that's where your players are coming from. I think that one might be a surprise. 18 players coming from California, but it's logical. You look at the map, it's a geographic close proximity, and makes it easier to get there, easier to get recruited. And I think it makes a lot of sense when you look at it from the perspective of where the BCHL is located. So an interesting piece of this, though, is how many prep players are playing. So you got a third of your players that are in the league that are from prep. Now, I should back up a little bit. Of those 120 Americans, 3 of them played in the WHL, which means they're not eligible to participate in NCAA hockey. So that number is a little bit lower than 120 as far as eligible players go. But let's talk prep for a second. You know, it's pretty obvious where the first few prep categories are where they're going to come from. A lot of kids from Mass and a lot of kids from New York coming over to play prep or coming from prep to play in the BCHL. Not uncommon. A little bit of a shock to me to see that many prep kids from California. But let's compare the USHL Phase 2 draft. I just did a video on this last week, and I looked at the first 3 rounds of the Phase 2 draft. This is the older kids, experienced players in the USHL draft. I want you to look at that number right there. Only 6 in the first 3 rounds were picked from the prep ranks. Now, if you add the Phase 1 draft, which is the young kids, the non-junior players coming from the U16 ranks, if you add that up, I believe there was only about 15 Americans in that category too. So not many prep players are being recruited to play in the USHL. And it's just interesting. I don't know what to read of that. I don't know if the BCHL does a better job of recruiting prep players, if there's some connections there with coaches in their former programs or what we have there. But it just seems like that's a significant number that should be at least acknowledged. So another number to just acknowledge is the amount of Tier 1 elite players. The Tier 1 elite, U18 for the most part, and U16, 28 players. Where are they coming from? Mostly coming from Michigan and mostly coming from Colorado, Arizona, and California. California leading the pack on the west side, with those other states contributing good numbers too. Here's a number that I was pretty interested in. The second number I just threw up there, the Minnesota, 8 high school kids coming from Minnesota, 8 of 10. And nobody would have ever questioned that. Minnesota is king of high school hockey. You would expect that. But 5 of 18 players coming from the high school ranks in Michigan, that's pretty good. It's pretty good for that state. It's not known as a hockey hotbed at the high school level. There are some good programs there. But I would have thought that we would have seen the number a little bit lower than that. That's a interesting fact, but that's cool. So date of births, the stratification is what I would expect it to be. You notice there's not many O2s in the league. It kind of fits in between the USHL and the North American League for age and for experience. The 99s that are coming back, almost all of them are uncommitted players. There's a couple that are already sitting on commitments. So let's look at the actual league team by team as far as amount of games played in juniors, experience, and by age. So if we look at age first, this is the BCHL, and we're only talking about a few teams that are under the age of 17. And when you look at the amount of experience in the league, it's still a fairly experienced league, even though it's younger with one team. I mean, that's a lot of experience to be carrying for a junior team with 1,500 games on the roster have already been played, and then 641 on one of the low sides. Now, compare that to the USHL. Let's pull that one up. USHL rosters, much younger. You're looking at, if you throw in the National Training and Development Program, one team that's 16 and a half years old on average, and you're talking about a lot of teams under 17 and a lot of teams that are barely 18. This is by far the youngest. If you put a North American snapshot up like this of the North American Hockey League, they'd all be in the 18 and a half, and 19 range. Interesting, though, to look at this side here on the games. Very comparable as a league as far as the highs and lows. Sioux Falls actually having a significantly lower number than the rest of the league as far as the experience. That's real interesting. That's real low for a junior program. And then the high of 1,200, that's about average for high. So your standard deviation is pretty big there because of the Sioux Falls number. But just interesting facts, not really much to do with that except for telling you that the league, the BCHL, sits in between the USHL and the North American Hockey League as far as their age and experience. There's 32 veterans returning to the BCHL, and of those veterans, 23 are without commits. That means the guys that are coming in with their commits, they committed for 2 years out when they made their commitment. They knew they were going to be coming back to play. So how many commitments are there? Well, there's 60 NCAA Division I commitments. You take away the major junior hockey players, that's over half of the kids walking in to the league already have a commitment in hand. What I thought was interesting is 10 Ivy League commitments in the league. I do attribute that to the amount of prep players and the fact that they're building. If you're already in a prep school on the East Coast, you understand prep does help you get into the Ivies and prepares you for that. That's kind of what they're there for. And so it just interesting that correlates with the prep number. So as a projection, I would project 30 to 40 more kids will get fresh commitments during the season this year. Great league, great numbers for Americans. Don't worry, Canada, we only come in for about a year and then we're out again, but it's a great place to visit and a great place to play hockey. Hope you enjoyed our look at British Columbia and why it's the 51st state of hockey. And once again, I am Jeff. I'm with Junior Hockey Advisor. Please like this video. Please follow us. We're on Facebook under the same name, Junior Hockey Advisor, for a page. We've got a group, and you can always go to juniorhockeyadvisor.com. Page is just being built out, but there's already a ton of content on there. Enjoy the content and leave us some feedback. Thank you.